What's the most f-ked up story you've ever heard? NSFW. I won't say my relation to the story, as I don't want my identity to be obvious. Basically, I know a 15-year-old girl who gave birth recently. It was found that the boy had Krabbe's, a fatal disease. Thus, the baby died shortly after birth. As with many diseases, Krabbe's is contained in a recessive gene. There must be 2 carriers to have a child with that disease. The girl's boyfriend isn't a carrier, though. Her dad is. And that's not the worst part. The baby is a result of 11 years of rape. He had been upping his daughter since she was 4 years old. When this information became widely known, her aunt responded to the situation by saying, "That little WH Ray should have kept her mouth shut instead of ruining the family's reputation." In college, my roommate had a Japanese girlfriend. So one night I wake up to the sound of them having sex. I hear him say the magic words. She says, "What? You know how Japanese girls sound." Anyway, he repeats himself and she says, "Ishti you not, oh. Okay. Suru sorry for Pearl Harbor." Someone in the herpetology lab at my university was caught putting a snake in his ass. The snake was in a condom at least. So it's not too bad. Edit. I spelled herpetology wrong. Edit number 2. Yes, it would have been head first. No, I can't confirm it was true. It's a popular story at my university. Edit number 3. Your PMs are weird. WTF. One of my college teachers told me a story about him and his long-term girlfriend rock climbing about 5 years ago. She slipped and hit her head on a rock. I guess she hit so hard that half her brains were falling out and he basically had to decide whether to stay with her or go get help. Figuring she was going to die, he wanted to be with her and held her brains into her head. Fortunately, someone came and helped them. He has Polaroids of her after she got stitched up in the hospital and she ended up living. Get a run for a generic medical call with the visiting nurse on scene. We are met by the nurse outside who is visibly disturbed. She explains that inside is a senile elderly woman who is covered in bed sores. She says once you get inside you will see why she has to go to the hospital. Once inside we realize she has maggots in the bed with her. We took off her shoes, which probably hadn't been done in weeks. The shoes were soggy, by the way. Her feet were infested with maggots. She was very stubborn, and even with us telling her this, she didn't want to leave her home. We convinced her, thankfully. TL. DR. Old lady had maggots in her feet. I'm a prison guard and always see and hear f-ked up stories. Some they could make multi-million-dollar horror movies out of. I was an alcoholic for 2 years and now I am on antidepressants. Most f-ked up? Sigh. Probably the 45-year-old who would ejaculate in baby bottles and feed it to his 2 infant kids with their milk. Or the one who would taser his 6-year-old niece in the face and eyes to make her perform fellatio on him. All this and more on a daily basis. I've contemplated putting a gun in my mouth a few times. You're not the one who needs a gun in the mouth. My mom is a nurse and one of her patients was a man who botched a suicide attempt and blew most of his face off with a gun. Apparently he was adopted as a kid and later on in his life he met a woman online and started dating her. Despite their large age difference, after a while they got serious and started living together. I forget how he found out, but it turns out the woman was his biological mother. She knew he was her son the entire time. When he found out, he was understandably not pleased. I worked with a guy who was an admitted racist. Aryan type. He lived in LA at the time of this story. But he had driven himself and a girlfriend to Vegas for a weekend. They were in the casino they were staying in. And a mixed race couple walked by. Ugh. That's f-king disgusting. He muttered. What? That? She said. What's wrong with that? I've been with a black guy before. Dot. You have? Oh. Oh. Hold on. I'll be right back. I forgot some chips in the room. He turned around. Went up to the room. Got his tea. took a different elevator down, and drove straight home, abandoning her in Vegas. She showed up on his doorstep 3 days later, pissed off, and he socked her in the mouth. He told her, "Get the FCK out of here, you lover, and don't come back." And he slammed the door in her face. He was proud to tell me this story. Yeah. F-ked up. Got one about cats. There was a lady named Rosa that had a tamale cart all around the small town that we frequented for fishing. I always ate her tamales. They were amazing. Well, one day Rosa's establishment got shut down by the Department of Health. Yassi. Rosa was collecting stray cats and mixing the cat meat in with the chicken and pork to go further. TLDR. I almost certainly, unknowingly, ate cat. Several times. Okay. So a mother calls the fire department cause her son was in the bathroom taking a shower and he wasn't responding to anything after an hour or so. When they bust the door down, they find the kid in fetal position in a pool of his own blood with a plunger sticking out his ass. Turns out the kid was F-king himself with the plunger and slipped. The plunger impaled through a good amount of organs, killing him instantly. I heard about a guy in the dorms who was really into fitness. He would have those protein shakes and stuff. Apparently he then started having arsehole pain and didn't know why. Went to the doctor, who informed him he had been unknowingly sodomized. Apparently his roommate would spike his protein shakes and pay him when he was passed out. Edit. I have no idea about the origin, and while it is F-ked, I laugh every time I tell it. Did they find the natty light in the bag of big black dildos? Edit. Thanks Reddit for making my most upvoted comment, the one about dildos and crappy beer. I live a few towns over from an abandoned mental hospital turned condos. The hospital was built in 1878, so it was an older building. One day, they transferred this 15-year-old kid from a newer hospital in the area. He had a habit of crawling around heating ducts. And after 3 weeks in the older hospital, he disappeared. So, a little while later, the staff in one of the wards noticed this horrible smell coming from inside the walls. Basically, the kid was crawling around the heating ducts, slipped, landed on the heating coils and literally roasted to death inside the wall. The staff had to cut him out of the wall, and when they pulled him out, his corpse was the consistency of jello. OP. You don't live in Louisiana, do you? I have a friend who claims his dad did the exact same thing, along with forcing his sons to kill kittens by smashing their heads against poles. It's all kinds of F-ked up. My friend told me about when her uncle up-head her. I'm not going into details, but it was sickening and my urge to kill was infinite. Yeah. I've had some friends, all girls, that have confided in me about being up-head or molested. I'm able to help them out because I myself lost my virginity to RP. It was a woman. Not like I was RP'd by a guy or anything. But it's still extremely traumatic all the same. But I'm right with you in the mindset that all you want to do is kill that person for causing that kind of pain and torture to someone you love. Friend told me this one. A long distance couple were visiting each other for spring break and being unprepared. The guy, let's call him Andrew, is without lube for sex. The girl, Heather, suggests he use mayo. They're both so horny he goes for it. While she's visiting him, they keep using the mayo as lube for their sessions. When she goes back to school, she feels something tickling her around her crotch. During the day she has several orgasms. She tries to muffle them, but they are frequent and surprising. When she goes home to look, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. She goes to a doctor to have it looked at. The doctor takes a peek and says, "My God, you have maggots in your vagina." Turns out the mayo attracted flies, which led to squirming maggots inside her, giving her orgasms. TL. I am never eating maggots again. The poop that took a pee. A friend of mine used to work in a mental hospital and they had to put this woman in a straitjacket in a padded room. She dislocated her shoulder, got out of the straitjacket, stripped down, shitty in a corner, and started fingering herself with her own sh*t as lubricant. My brother was at work taking a sh*t and his supervisor rushed in to take a thumper dumper, and when he plowed his ass on the seat, he landed on his ballsack. He fell off the toilet while my brother was taking a sh*t in the stall directly next to him, and his back went out and he pooped on the floor. What was worse was he fell towards my brother's side, so his head was poking up his stall. The guy ended up getting 6 months off work for this because he threw his back out pretty bad. It was a pretty terrible thing to happen to a person, as my brother refused to help clean him up a bit before he went and got help, noting how serious the injury was. One of my friends in high school was babysitting a family's 2 small children, 2 and 4. They came inside from a snowball fight because the little one needed a diaper change. She took him into the other room to take care of it, but ran back in when she heard a pop and screaming. The 4-year-old had put the family's cat in the microwave because he was afraid it was cold. Back in 1998 or 1999, my roommate and I used to take a bus to work together. Every day the bus would stop to pick up a woman with no arms or no legs in her wheelchair at the assisted living facility we passed. We never knew her name, just dubbing her as Torso Lady. One day we're riding down and we see cops everywhere. It turns out some kid had just whipped down the road and hit Torso Lady in her chair as she crossed the road. She flew out of her chair, landed on her face, and slid about 50 feet, leaving a blood smear down the road. We presumed that she was dead. That evening we went out to drinks with a couple who'd moved into the house next to us. My roommate begins to tell this story about the accident and gets to, "I'm pretty sure she's dead. Or at least missing her face. She must have skipped like a stone." The woman with a shocked look on says, "What? Amy is dead?" And tears filled her eyes. Without thinking, my roommate blurts out, "You know Torso Lady?" Probably apocryphal. A pair of newlyweds went to the Philippines on their honeymoon. The bride went missing after a few days. The groom comes home alone and devastated, and figures that she is killed by muggers. Years later, he goes on a business trip to the Philippines again. The business partner has a weird taste and invites him to a freak show. He finds his wife writhing on the stage with no arms, no legs, and no eyes. The husband leaves the country on schedule, alone. NSFL. My girlfriend once lived in Pontiac, Michigan, and I guess a lot of that area is really bad. One night she was doing dishes and heard 3 teenagers laughing, and then they walked past the window through her backyard. She rushed out to check on her puppy that was chained in the backyard. The F-cuz had slit the puppy's throat for no reason. Every time I think about this story, it makes me wish I could set off a doomsday device and instantly eradicate the entire human race. When I was in 5th grade, my index finger was cut deep and I could see my bone and the little cut nerves. I heard someone lied on the internet once. I'm pretty sure it's not true, but it freaks me out to think about it. No one will see this, but I heard a story about a frat in New York. This guy's uncle was at this frat party and the guys in the party told him to go see Screaming Eddie because they paid good money for him. He goes into this room and there is a cage baby crib where there is a midget, or short person, who was also mentally handicapped. The people of the party were throwing stuff at him, dumping beer on him and puking on him, and he was obviously screaming. It turns out his brother was renting his disabled brother to college parties and getting paid good money. He proved the story was true by calling his old college friend and asking him about Screaming Eddie, and he confirmed it. I remember the time I made up a story. It was good. Once there was an ugly barnacle. He was so ugly that everyone died. Listen to the song Dance with the Devil by Immortal Technique. It's a chilling song. Jolly Rancher. This is the part of the internet that needs to be redacted. Some dude F-ked his friend's mom while the friend was in the hospital. When I used to go to high school, this pretty F-ked up girl got pregnant and didn't want the baby. So her and her F-king sick as FCK Dumbus boyfriend got really drunk and she passed out and he hit her in the stomach with a baseball bat till the baby died and she got rid of it. Yeah, that happened. You asked. By placing golden tablets in a hat and using seer stones to decipher them. MR. A friend of mine, female, was in a storybook relationship with a guy for 6 years. He proposed to her one day and she went to work to think about it all day. She walked into her apartment after work ready to say yes and found him in bed with someone else. She is easily the nicest person I've ever met and a very caring person. She has never wronged him. Why this man did what he did is something I may never understand. She told me she cried for a very long time, but you probably figure that much. Edit. To anyone standing up for this man's actions, you're basically saying she deserved it. No one deserves that. I knew a guy who went to college. He has a roommate who got his nipple pierced. One day the roommate is examining the piercing and sees a little white string coming out of the piercing. He starts to pull on it until it comes out a few inches. He decides the best thing to do is to cut it off with a pair of scissors. He ended up cutting a nerve and he passed out and shit himself. Nerves aren't nice neat little strands. They branch and are connected to tissues all over. You guys can rest easy knowing this is pretty much guaranteed urban legend. Cumbox. Krusty Panties. Jolly Rancher. Dorito. My mom made bacon for Sunday morning breakfast. But when I got up and came to the table, my dad had eaten all of it. I'm late to the party, so I'm sure no one will even see this. But I've got one super f***ed up story for you. My friend was on vacation at a really nice resort. Him and his parents had rooms on the 7th floor right next to each other, both with balconies. My friend locked his younger brother out on the balcony as a joke. He then left the room, pretending he was going to leave him out there. His brother got mad and decided to try to climb across to his parents' unlocked balcony. Yeah, you know where this is going. He ended up falling to his death. You can't make this shit up. He would then meow his lawn. In cities and towns all over the world, children, many of them just like you, are abducted from their homes and sold into the world of underground sex slavery. Russian sleep experiment. Look it up. Some friends of mine who used to do a lot of drugs told me this story about some people from their hometown. One night, these guys were hanging out at their friend's house and decided to do some PCP. Because why not, right? So the dude whose house they are at leaves to go on a run for snacks or something. The dudes that are still there get sick of waiting, so they find a jar or peanut butter and decide to eat that while they wait for the snack guy to get back. They try to open the peanut butter but can't. It's too tight. So they keep trying to get the peanut butter open for like 30 minutes. But they can't get it open. Finally the guy whose house it was gets back with the food and tells them that it wasn't a jar of peanut butter. It was his f***ing cat that they were trying to open. Finally the guy whose house it was gets back with the food and tells them that it wasn't a jar of peanut butter. It was his f***ing cat that they were trying to open. What? An otter species was declared extinct by the Japanese government. The father of one of my friends went to school with a guy who lived on a farm. This kid apparently was really horny one day and somehow got the idea to take one of those machines farmers use to milk cows and attach it to his dick. He had all of the blood in his body sucked through the cow milker and died a horrible death. It was his father that found him later on. I can't think of a worse feeling than having all of the blood in your body sucked from your penis as you try to pry off the device. Other than being his father finding your kid naked in the barn dead with a cow milker attached to his penis. I call bullshit. The automatic milkers are designed to be gentle on the cows so they don't FCK up the sphincter at the end of the teat and get mastitis. Also they don't generate enough negative pressure to make them impossible to pull off. Am I the only one who enjoys just masturbating?